Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Ramos Law Difference Makers podcast. I'm Dr. Jim Hoven, your host, and it is my honor and pleasure to visit with people who are making a difference in the lives of others every day. And today I have a unique guest, a very cool guest, someone who I had heard his name for many years, and I didn't really put it together because in his world, he is at the top of his game, and his world is one that mine doesn't really come into too much. Now, we're both really into sports. And so where I heard him first, I was like, okay, what is this auto racing sports thing? And so then I heard his name, and I'm like, okay, so I remembered it. So when he became a guest on the show, I was so excited. Kurt Hansen is my guest today. Kurt, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
My honor and my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me as part of the Ramos Law family.
Absolutely. Well, Kurt, listen, I have done some research on you, and again, listening to you on the radio when you were on Sports Radio 95, The Fan, right?
Yep.
Seeing where you've gone, I knew just a little bit. So when I saw that you were going to be a guest with us, I did some study and research, and I am telling you what, the things that you've done, the way that you've transformed and innovated and taking your sport to the world is fantastic. Can you just give a little brief intro about what you're doing, who you are, and then how you got into motorsports and racing in the first place?
Well, boy, that's I'm not sure we have enough time, Jim, but I'll take a shot at it, right? I do radio for a living, so I kind of get the format. It's something that's been in my DNA my whole life. And so currently I am the host and executive producer of Race Central Radio here on ESPN AM 1600 in the Mile High City, also FM 104.3 The Fan on their HD2 channel. And then we stream that program around the world at racecentralmedia.com. We've been doing that now, well, here on the Mile High, almost 20 years, 25 years in total since my start. So the TV side, we're available, as I say, on the radio, anywhere you can hear my voice in the world. You can watch us on Race Central TV. And to our TV audience, I tell them anywhere you can see this mug on television, you can listen to us at racecentralmedia.com or on The Fan or on ESPN here in Denver. And we host a 2-hour primetime drive show on Friday, which is great for not just the gearheads of the world, because we're not just motorsports. We're motorsports, custom cars, bikes, collectible cars, celebrities. I mean, Patrick Dempsey's been a guest many, many times on our program. Danica Patrick, Dale Earnhardt Jr. Kind of the A-listers. That's kind of our tag.
Yes.
As we say, the greatest names in motorsports from the front range to Formula One, and that's what we do on TV and on radio. And we've built a very highly respected platform, a very highly consumed platform. I mean, in today's world of media, you got to be everywhere. So we podcast, much like this podcast. We have our own podcast. We stream off the Fan site, my site, AM, FM, Alexa, Amazon Prime on TV, Roku. We're available. Anybody's got a TV set can watch us, and anybody's got a portable device can consume us. And that's really kind of the key. But at 44 years old, I decided to change my life from being involved in owning and managing high-end car dealerships and motorcycle shops and a race shop and stuff. And I just, after 25 years, you're lucky, right? You're an overnight success. I knew some people in the industry and kind of reached out and said, this is what I want to do. And they're like, you're crazy. You don't just decide to do radio and TV at a national level because you had a dream. And I'm like, well, why not?
Wow.
Martin Luther King did. A lot of people do.
Yeah.
And so I started. The next thing I know, I was doing an ESPN Saturday night show called The V Show on 450 affiliates. And that went along with my radio show on ESPN, originally here in Denver in 2002. And then went to The Fan for quite a few years. And then went away to another broadcast platform because we were the only motorsports show locally and regionally on Altitude Sports. And they built a 5-hour motorsports block around us that we were the lead in, so it draw lots of eyeballs. When Kroenke took his sports platforms to Mile High Sports from The Fan, they kind of nudged us that way, so we went there for a few years, and The Fan kept chasing us to come back, now Bonneville, and we've been back there now for 4 years, and we're the only gearhead programming in the market. I'm very lucky to do what I do, and we have a huge following. When I moved here in 2002, everybody told me I was crazy. I moved from a number 3 market in San Francisco on ESPN radio and doing TV and, California is a hotbed for all things gearhead. I mean, it's part of the culture there. It's like here, if you don't own a dog here, you get evicted.
That's right.
Yeah, we have a new house, and I'm honey, we're going to get evicted. The HOA is going to throw us out. She says, why? We don't have a dog.
That's right.
So when I came here, though, it was exciting. Now my wife of 18 years, and we built this platform here, and it's ironic because the marketing guy at Bandimer Speedway, who's a partner with your firm,
yes,
we first came here. Very highly respected guy, had been with them for a long, long time. And we do a lot of work with the NHRA. Said, you kind of taken the city by storm in what you're doing because, there's been a lot of comers and goers. And we heard the same thing when we launched our Phoenix platform on Fox Sports Radio down there about 10 years ago. Another very desirous market. It also parallels well to this because as this season starts to wind down there, the death march of summer is over.
Sure.
And that market lights up for 7 months. So they're kind of...
they dovetail with each other.
Exactly. But, it's funny, too, because gearheads are huge consumers of what we do. The numbers say 6 to 8 hours a week in many different formats. But they don't stop buying just because the season ends. The season's really, it's a 24/7, 365 audience. So it's a good fit for our partners too.
When you talk about these, you refer to them as gearheads, as the fans. Is there a difference between a racing fan of a certain type? Like, do Formula guys follow NASCAR, or do they kind of stay in their own group and then they come over to the gearhead section for commonalities?
So that's a great question too. And there's about 10 different answers. But so... because this is a law firm, right? I'm going to give you the legalese. I'm just kidding. Yes and no. How's that? So, yeah, Formula One guys probably aren't NASCAR guys in mass, but there's some cross pollination there. But straight liners tend to be straight liners. They cross over to NASCAR pretty strongly, but sports car guys are open wheel guys. So they're kind of it's almost like Hatfields and McCoys. There's these factions.
Sure.
And so what we did is we just found a way to communicate with all of them because I've raced in all those categories, still do. So, audience wants to, follow people that are like them, that they can engage with because they understand because there's a psychograph there. So, like rally guys are rally guys, open wheel guys, and I say open wheel, Formula One, IndyCar guys, a lot of cross-pollination there, but not a lot to NASCAR. Drag racing cross-pollinates with NASCAR a bit because it's, good old Americana. And these are onesies and twosies, but the key, especially what we do, is much like a law firm. If you have an attorney that's a specialist in every category of potential litigation, you skew a lot more audience because you have something. It's like, I call it a smorgasbord. If you had a restaurant, anybody could order anything and you can eat there, why go anywhere else? That's
so would you then, to serve your audiences, would you have a episode that does one kind of racing and then an episode that does another, or do you have different shows that serve the different populations?
Another great question. So yes and no. So our TV show is a little bit of Formula One, a little bit of air race, a little bit of NASCAR, a little bit of IndyCar. So really the plate, as I've been told by many racing series, we put eyes on content that people may never watch. Because if you're a stay-in-your-laner for Formula One, you're probably not watching a lot of NASCAR. But if we have a Formula One segment, we follow it up a little NASCAR segment, those eyes go to that prize. So we're letting everybody eat from the trough. How's that sound?
I love that.
Yeah.
And what I relate that to is I love to fly fish, right? I
there you
love
go.
to fly fish. And so when you look
You
at
an Orvis guy?
In some cases, I'm pretty much just a straight ahead.
You tie your own flies, Jim?
No, I do not. I used to.
I swat them, but I don't tie them.
I used to tie my own flies, interestingly enough, way back when. And then I've got a buddy who, it's art to him.
Yeah,
it's
my dad was the
passion.
same way.
So he does that. But I won't watch a lot of saltwater. I'll watch some, but I stick to the fly fishing stuff. And then when I see fishing, if there's a lack of fishing programming on, then I'll watch something for a while. So that's why I was interested in that.
Yeah, so the radio show's the same as the TV. So we'll have guest A-listers on every Friday from 4 to 6, and then it replays Sundays from 8 to 10, and then goes on the fan website for the podcast. But I'll have maybe someone from Trans Am, a drag racer, maybe an IndyCar driver, so on and so forth, so that, again, we're using that same cross-pollination philosophy on radio, as we do on TV. And we're the longest consistently running motorsport show on radio or TV in this country.
That is incredible. And internationally, like you have had an impact on the world. I know when you think of the racing sports, what I think of is these races of these cars that go through the towns, right?
Rally.
The rally racing. Is that the most popular type of racing outside of the U.S., or is it just a huge community everywhere?
It's a huge community. I mean, almost 40% of Americans are somehow consuming gearhead stuff.
40%?
Yeah, 40%.
Wow.
33% are NASCAR fans. So we include, I know this is a very conservative number, but in some way, shape, or form, huge, which is why when you look at racing programming, you've got, Tide liquid detergent all the way to ibuprofen and car wax and dishes and home appliances and stuff, because it's a very shiny audience. It's an 18-plus audience, so 18 to infinity, but the core is really low 30s to upper 50s, predominantly married with 2.5 kids. Pretty shiny audience, and they've got disposable income. So they travel a lot, they consume a lot. But outside of America, it's, rally's very big in Europe. Ironically, here we're doing this the week of the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb, which I used to do all the media for. I announced Fan Fest and did it 3 years at the Summit for ESPN, 2 for Speed TV, a couple years for Altitude. And it's an hour down the road from here, but most people in Denver that are gearheads have no idea it exists. It's really kind of tilted itself towards the Asians, the South Americans, and the Europeans, because that's where hill climb is really strong.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, really strong. But no, outside of America, I mean, you've got major racing going on every piece of dirt or asphalt going up, and sky, air races, I mean, offshore power boating. We cover it all. And I think that's what's made us popular. We're highly consumed in South America, Europe. The Caribbean is a huge market for us on TV. Obviously, Europe. Rally's very popular outside of this country. We were for 2 years the U.S. rights holder for the World Rally Championship. It was the first time ever a U.S. broadcast platform had been exclusive distributor to that product. And then another great series in Australia called the Aussie V8 Supercars, some of the best sedan racing in the world. I mean, they've never seen a car they didn't want to hit. I mean, it's really, really good stuff.
Wow. This Pikes Peak thing, I've got to ask you, to me, that seems incredibly dangerous. And I know people have lost their lives on that because you were so involved in that, and it is a local race that we have here, and it's coming up. Tell me a little bit about what's the mentality to race that? What do you go into it thinking, man, this could be my last one? Do you go into it thinking, I'm so good at this. This is just what I do. How does the athlete prepare for that?
So, and being that I still participate in that kind of stuff, I've raced with Colorado Hill Climb Association and been very involved with the hill climb. Paul Dollenbach is a very, very good friend. He just set the fastest open wheel qualifying time ever for this year's event. And racing is a very, very interesting space. And from being a former, nationally ranked ski racer, and towards the end of my career being a downhiller, because the U.S. ski team wanted to replicate what the Canadians had done, the crazy Canucks as they called them. They basically took over the World Cup in downhill category for a long time. Every time you go down the hill as a downhiller, skiing at anywhere from 75 to 90 miles an hour. And back in the 70s and 80s, you didn't have the protections and things that we have now. I mean, snow fence was exactly that. It was a fence with a bunch of snow on it and hay bales, which freeze overnight and you hit them. It's like hitting a wall.
Wow.
So every time you left the start gate, potentially that could be your deal. But you compartmentalize. So there's been some interesting movies made over the past couple decades that always have to deal with that in some way, shape, or form, because it's a real part of the existence. But, coming up to race weekend, you get nervous, you get butterflies, it's hard to sleep. I mean, all the things that are involved with it, because, as I've said many times, I love stick and ball sports. I played them all through high school and some in college, but, strike three never killed anybody. Missing a layup never killed anybody. Missing a wide open net as a soccer player never killed anybody. Miss hitting your tee shot never killed anybody. Well, maybe somebody in the gallery if you're playing with Jerry Ford. But that's another story.
That's another story.
Yeah, that's another story for another time. Sorry, Mr. Ford. But there's a process, but you compartmentalize. And when a driver is killed, a little factoid too, you'll never hear of a driver dying at a racetrack because you never want to. The tracks and race series don't want that stigma. They're usually pronounced at the hospital, maybe days later, because there's just certain protocols.
Sure.
But when it happens right in front of your face, like it did a few years ago with Dan Weldon, or my dear friend Justin Wilson, who is Formula One driver extraordinaire, IndyCar driver extraordinaire, who won a couple times, was going to race in the hill climb a few years ago, was killed in a freak accident in Pocono about 4 or 5 years ago in an IndyCar race. When it happens right in front of you, it's very tough because what it does is it immediately puts right in front of your face that by the grace of God, that could be me.
Yes.
So you do a lot of compartmentalization, but you don't really think like when you get in the car, this could be it.
You're so focused.
Yeah, and you have to be.
Yes.
If you have those thoughts, you wouldn't do what we do.
Right. And going up that hill, is there something when you're dialing it up? And for people who've never seen it, they should go online and check out.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of good video footage of people flying up Pikes Peak. Do you see the edge, or are you focused, like they say, focus on where you want the car, the wheel, something to go?
So I do a lot of high-level racing instruction and driving instruction. I'm probably the highest accredited instructor in the state. Your focus has to be spot on, as we would say. Again, because if you look down or looked out of the car, depending if it's an open wheel car, open cockpit, or you just don't do that.
The car is going to go where your focus
so
is.
So the key is the hands go over the eyes. So the sight picture, so when you look to the apex of the corner, the hands will naturally follow. So your focus has to be laser sharp because there's no wiggle room up there, especially, maybe 20 years ago when they weren't going as wickedly fast as they're going now. You had some wiggle room. There is zero wiggle room now.
Is there a way to train focus as you're an instructor, you've done all this, you still compete, you do all this. Can you train focus for that kind of thing like you can train other types of skills, or is focus something that you have or you don't, or you develop over time? And part two of that, I was just talking to a friend of mine, a really good friend, and he's a shooter, competitive shooter.
So am I.
And when he shot, he said there's a thing that happens where your brain, it's a neurological thing where your brain starts to, you know to pull the trigger and it won't pull it. And once that happens, you have to change the type of trigger. You can't undo it. Does that same kind of thing happen? So focus, can you train it? And B, if you lose it, can you get it back?
Ooh, a lot going on there. So it's like getting the yips as a golfer. You might be a phenomenal putter your whole life, and all of a sudden you can't take the club away. So muscle memory has a lot to do with it, but also has to do with the psychographically how you're programmed. So, and I'm a competitive shooter too. I've been since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. There's a whole metamorphosis that takes place as you are a shooter, and a lot of it comes down to muscle memory and also memory in your brain, but also your breathing. So you always want to be shooting on the exhale. Mm-hmm. Now, in three-gun competition where you're moving quickly, it has to happen, but it has to happen in nanoseconds. And in a race car, at 140 miles an hour, if you miss your turning point by a foot, that means your exit's probably 3 feet off. Well, if that exit is the edge of the road, that's not a good thing.
That's not a good thing.
I don't know much about that, but that's not going to rub out.
Yes.
So can you train it? Absolutely. If you lose it, can you get it back? That's the big challenge. I mean, we've learned about, baseball players that can't throw the ball to somebody anymore. A pitcher can't hit a backstop, or a second baseman can't throw the ball to first base. He's 10 feet off target. I mean, weird stuff happens. And when you work the brain, and I call it the CPU, sometimes that's just the CPU shutting down. It needs to cool off a little bit. Can you retrain it? Yeah. Does it mean you come back to where you were before? Maybe.
And is that technology that you train? Do you go to a certain kind of person where you're watching and doing video work to try to dial back in,
everything.
Or is it a on the road?
It's just like Tin Cup. You wear the silly hat with the balls and the bing things and the ding ding. You go see the medicine man, the voodoo doctor. You do whatever you can.
Yes.
But I've known many drivers that have had huge incidents, as we would call it, and that just they just don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't come back. You have to be like in Top Gun. My dad was a flyer. I'm a huge flyer. I've spent days at Miramar watching F-14s do cool stuff. There's a scene in the movie that says, if you think, you lose. And it's kind of true. You have to be, when I'm instructing, let the car come to you, because if you're always catching the car like, whoa, 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 you're just setting yourself up to get hurt. So actually, when you're going really fast, there's a thing called the zone, and nobody can really explain it. But it's like when a hitter's in the zone, everything looks like it's a beach ball coming at him in slow motion. When you lose the zone, everything looks like a Zantac. Driving's the same way. It's ballet on the pedals. When you're going really quick, you're not thinking about what you're doing. It's like flying an F-14, man. If the bad guy's over there, you just go.
Yep.
You don't think about, okay, I need to go over there, because by the time you go there, he's already there and he's behind you and he's on your 6, and that doesn't happen. It's not good either. So it's a ballet. It's like doing radio and television. When I first started doing it, people, very high-ranking people in the industry, because we kind of came on like a storm. They say, you have it, and I would say, well, what is it? Like, everybody asks that question. But you just have it.
You just know it when you see it.
It's a natural thing. And I think a lot of it just has to come from your DNA. But, driving a race car was the same way. But skiing, also many very famous ski racers became very good race car drivers. Jean-Claude Killy, Teo Fabi. I mean, I can go on and on because it's timing, it's line, it's being, focused in the moment when you're going 90 miles an hour on the side of a hill that if you fall down, it doesn't work out good either. So some goofy people are put on earth to be goofy, and I guess I qualify.
Well, you know what? You are doing an amazing job educating me and helping me understand. I'm kind of getting the feelings that you're going through.
Yeah.
How would you describe when you're doing what you do? Because it doesn't sound like you do a lot of race commentary, like the actual race of saying, okay, now you're calling the race.
Actually, I do. I still do a lot of that. I announced all the Denver Grand Prix. I was a Champ Car announcer off and on for years. I still do a lot with Long Beach Grand Prix. I was a CBS television host and series announcer for the Pirelli World Challenge Series a couple years ago, which is now called SRO. World Outlaws here in Colorado, dirt track racing. I still do a lot of that.
Oh, you do?
Oh, yeah. With doing 3 national network, television shows and a radio show every Friday and all the other goofy stuff we do. Yeah, time's an issue, but I've actually won awards for my announcing too. So,
wow. So how do you, and this is where my question was going, how do you take what you've been able to feel in the car, behind the wheel, in all these different types of racing? Because I'm sure it's the same feeling, but there's nuances to going up a hill versus going around a track versus doing it in an oval or whatever. Yeah. How do you give that to me, to someone who's never had the chance to do that, so that I can kind of feel and get that sense of tingling in my spine? Are there certain words or tempos or tones that you use?
All of it. Setting the audience up. I use a phrase frequently, especially as they're coming or getting ready to come to the green flag. It's like, now's the time. If the little short hairs in the back of your neck are not standing up, you should probably go home. And people get a kick out of that.
Yeah.
Having done it too, it's like announcing Denver Grand Prix. People would say, how did you know that he was going to make that move? I said, because I've done it. It's why the networks hire, high-level professional athletes to comment or give commentary on their sport of endeavor, because having done it, you can kind of anticipate what the next move may be. Perfect example is the local dirt track and short track racing. I ran winged and non-winged midgets and sprint cars in California for a long time. And dirt track racing is a very interesting sport. But, when I'm calling a race, especially in an oval, maybe quarter-mile oval, it's all right in front of you. So I've done those moves. So as I'm announcing, I may say, bet money, marble, chalk, the 3 car is going to try to go high here and do a crossover move, and it happens. And after people, how did you... I say, well, I don't have ESPN, haha, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night, haha. Having done it or tried to do it, you can anticipate what that guy is thinking because you've done it.
Yes.
It's like in you're a chiropractor. To make this adjustment, you've done it a million times. The muscle memory's in your activity.
Yep.
And you've done it before, and you should know what the outcome is going to be. So you can tell them, I'm going to do this. When I do this, you're going to hear a crack, and you're going to feel better. And boom, hey, you're right, Doc. How come you knew that? Well,
we've done this a few times.
we've done this one time.
I got to tell you, I haven't been to a lot of races. I've been to Bandimere many, many times for drag racing. And one of the most interesting races I've ever been to was the Indy 500. I went one time, and what was fascinating to me, it was a different expectation, or it was different than anything I expected, where I thought I'd be able to see the race. But when you're there, the track is so big that you see them going around you. And during the warm-up laps, I thought that's what it was. And so they go around and like zoom, zoom. Then when that flag hit, it went and they were gone.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, explain that feeling to me.
The first time I went was in 1983. Indy is a happening. Its tagline is the greatest spectacle in racing, and being a former open wheel guy and still an open wheel guy. And we have many of those drivers and team owners on Race Central Radio all the time. Even as a grizzled old whatever I am, I still get I get the butterflies and the goosebumps even before doing my show. I just love what I do. And announcing a race is as an announcer, you have to transmit that passion. As a radio host, we need to paint pictures with words. So, the first time I went to Indy, I remember we were back there for a week. We were going to all the dirt track races in Indy and the NFL Hall of Fame and the Detroit Grand Prix to wrap up our gearhead 10 days. Actually more like 2 weeks. I was in Southwest Vista. I remember we caught the bus from downtown. They don't do that, well, not from that spot anymore because there's a basketball arena there. Well, actually Lucas Oil Stadium. Get on the bus at 3 a.m, get in the place at 4, go find your seat in Southwest Vista where you were, lay down, go to sleep, and all of a sudden you have people nudging you. And then you wake up and there's 350,000 people there. And you find out they're sitting with great-grandpa, grandpa, dad, and the kids, and they've been going there since dirt was young. It's got a real, it's a real, and boy, you go to the Indy 500 parade, it's like, if the short hairs on the back of your neck aren't standing up, you're probably not an American. It's pretty intense, man. But and that was the first year they went, I want to say they broke 225 or something like that. Teo Fabi was on the pole. And then they come down those short chutes. I get to Southwest Vista. Again, back to sight picture. You pick them up at the exit of 3, and you look at the exit of 4 as they're at the exit of 3, because by the time you turn your head, they're out of 4 on back to start finish. So you gotta be a prepared spectator, because if you think you're going to follow them, imagine watching a tennis match between two of the best in the world standing 2 feet apart and just smashing the ball at each other. You're gonna need a chiropractor.
Yes. Oh man, it was insane. It was an amazing experience.
Pardon my.
Oh no, that's good. I wanted to go back to something that you talked about earlier, where you said you don't just start a TV radio show after being a racer. And you had mentioned something to me before we started the show, where you had said, I'm kind of a goal-driven guy. When I see something, I want to go get it. Do you have advice for people that are chasing their dreams, that are, they might have a passion, because your passion exudes out of every pore of you? What do you say to them if they don't have the experience and they don't know what to do, and maybe they don't have the education, and I'm using air quotes here? What would you say to someone chasing their dream?
Wow. Again, marvelous question. I've done so many things in my life. Don't give up, and but pick your poison carefully. I talk to communications kids all the time. This is not an easy business. And it's getting harder. I got hired by CBS 2 years ago to do TV for the Pro League World Challenge Series when 100 of the top talent people at ESPN got laid off same day. I was 61 at the time. So, it's as I put it, don't kick doors down, but if there's a crack, push it open and walk in. But pick your endeavor carefully, and be sure that you're willing to really fight, because it's nothing in this world, especially in the year we've just had now. It's good to see America come alive again. and hopefully the rest of the world too soon. But I mean, last year was, I had 4 surgeries in my head. I mean, hip surgery, all due to, some poor workmanship. We'll leave it at that. Plus still trying to run the business, trying to host programming, monetize it. But I knew we'd come out the back end blowing up and glowing, and we are, God bless. But just fight. Be prepared. And, here's a term that we now use so well: pivot. You got to learn how to pivot a lot. When you're at a racetrack, you never turn your back to the race cars. Be pivoting a lot. Keep your eye on the prize. Be sure it doesn't run over you.
And do you have mentors? Do you have examples? Maybe you're just like the ever Energizer Bunny where you're always charged up. Is there some things that you do to make sure that you're giving all the time? Like any stream. This is one thing I learned a long time ago that I found to be true. I can't give if I'm not refilling. A water reservoir that just receives with no outlet eventually overflows. If it's not getting water, it stagnates. So you have to recharge. You have to do that. Do you have things that you do to learn more, to grow more, to do all that? Or is this just a constant momentum for you?
Like I'll be responding to an email or a text from maybe a listener or a viewer or someone that follows us. And they're like, oh man, you text me back at like 6 a.m. on Sunday morning. I'm like, yeah. Like, what are you doing? I said, I'm up. My wife, it's God bless her. I don't know how she puts up with me. She's like, yeah. She's like, where's the plug? And it's what it takes. I'm 63 years old, and we get joked that we have 2 kids, a 5-year-old named AJ and me.
Yes,
and it just has to be. And do I get tired? Of course I do, especially with everything that's gone on the last year with me physically. But I'm getting better, and I feel great. I lost 60 pounds, so yay.
Congratulations. How did you do that? What was the process of that? I know that
called being on a liquid diet.
I was going to say, I know you had some stuff going on with your ability to eat and all that kind of stuff, but
eating's good. I enjoy
helps.
eating. Yeah, I enjoy eating. I know every great soup and Chinese restaurant in the marketplace. a lot of soft noodles and wonton soup and stuff for long. But anyway, no, it's almost got to be manic. Quiet time. I'm not sure what the heck that is. Quiet time for me, I go to the racetrack or I get my race car and go race. Hopefully we'll be doing that. I think I'm cleared with my jaw now to do that. Driving race cars is very violent. I mean, this is not just like driving around in a Cadillac at a race. I mean, it's a 150, 60 mile an hour race car. You sit on the ground and it's very violent, and it's exhausting, but it's also, man, a good race weekend. It's like, it's good.
Did you know that you were going to be a race car driver from the time you were a young child, or how did that develop?
I knew I wanted to do something uber hyper competitive. And so I played a lot of sports, and I was always that guy, like, they're like, don't mess with that guy. He's a little crazy. And that's what it takes to perform at a high level. You got to kind of have a lot of intensity. And so sports, and then I decided one day, hey, you know what? I want to be a ski racer. I want to win a gold medal.
Because you saw the Olympics, or what was that all about?
Just because that was my space. That's what I did. I was playing sports 24/7.
And you were a good skier as a kid.
I started skiing really late. I ended up competing in a series called, back then it was called the Can-Am Series, now it's the NORAM Series, which is the best ski racers in North America that are on the World Cup or Europa Cup. And I found myself competing, and back then they had seeds. So the first seed was the top 15 skiers, slalom, giant slalom, downhill, or whatever. They got to go first. So I was in the first seed. I was racing in the first seed at 20 years old with kids that had been skiing since they were 2, racing since they were 4, and I started skiing when I was 7 and started racing when I was 15. Don't ask me how that happened, but it just, and then one day I woke up and I'm like, this is okay, but what's next?
And how did cars come in? Because you were
always a gearhead.
Just fascinated reading and learning.
Oh, yeah. I used to fly with my dad at airplanes and classic cars and stuff. And so, man, if it floats, flies, runs on dirt, pavement, whatever, that's kind of our tagline too. And so I got in the car business. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to drive race cars when I was 20 and race with some of the top guys in the country. And the rest. Then I went to Europe for a year to run Formula 3. Came home broke. All kinds of good stuff.
But that led to you collecting and having dealerships. There's a whole different mindset of racing versus now buying a business and selling and creating and trading and negotiating. How did you make that transition from the adrenaline side into now you have to have the same type of focus, but now you have to internalize and channel your energy in a different way, I would imagine, than being behind the wheel?
Wow. So it's interesting because a lot of that stuff, it kind of ebbs and flows between each other. I had strong business acumen from my father. I was adopted out of, hospital in Berkeley, California in 1958. Cal Berkeley. My parents went there. I guess it was a fraternity party accident. So go Cal, go Bears. I'm a Bears fan.
Go Bears.
It just kind of comes to me. I don't know if I have an answer. Like my wife says, she's like, the aliens invade your brain overnight and stuff just comes out of your mouth. And in some ways, yeah. I mean, I think that's what makes us very entertaining on radio and TV. I was asked years ago by Sirius Satellite to be the Howard Stern of motorsports. And so we were going to do that deal, and they realized, man, you might be a little too unplugged. And, they had sponsorship from IndyCar and NASCAR. Like, this might be who knows? We'll see what happens. But that's kind of our thing. But I don't think I ever really knew I wanted to do anything until I did it.
That's amazing. Not a lot of planning. Like, you let life come to you.
Yeah.
Like, you were living in the moment, and then the next best thing presented itself, and you jumped into it. Like you say, the door was cracked, so you pushed it open. How did you said something to me before the show, and I had read it before, that you didn't want to leave the audience having anything in their mind but what's next. You didn't want them saying, so what?
Exactly.
How do you go about doing that? Because I related that to what you just said about you being in the Howard Stern of the motorsports, kind of world. How do you go about making me as an audience member go, what's next? Give me more.
So, and I'm going to use an analogy here real quick. So there was a phenomenal football player that used to play for the Oakland Raiders named Todd Christensen. He was one of the top tight ends in the NFL forever. Super brilliant guy, wrote poetry. I mean, a fascinating guy. And I grew up with that team because my dad was one of the first season ticket holders from way back when. And but he was too smart for what he tried to do. Too many big words, too much stats and facts and stuff, and he didn't make it. So the key, maybe this is a question from 10 minutes ago, is a massive amount of knowledge is good, but only to be used as a appetizer in conversation to set, like when I'm announcing, coming out of turn 3, it looks like the 33 is going to go high. Watch this. I guarantee he's going to make that move. Boom, he makes that move. So you kind of set the table. It's like the sorbet, the palate cleanser. So you just paint pictures with words and convey the excitement and the what's next to the fan. So the fan is, the old saying goes, a seat is only $10, but you only need the edge because you're on the edge of your seat or standing up or whatever, or some stupid saying like that. So just set the tone. So the anticipation level is very high. So when it does happen, the wow just comes organic.
It just comes with it.
It just comes with it.
Do you have a person that you really looked up to or still look up to as far as in any sport, an announcer, someone that you think, man, they really have the goods?
So great. That's wonderful. So, and bless his soul, Bruce Flanders passed this last year. And Bruce was an iconic announcer. He announced at Ascot Park, one of the most famous dirt tracks in the world, which is now gone. They turned it into condos. Yay. The Long Beach Grand Prix, this will be almost my 40th year at Long Beach this year. I raced in the Grand Prix back in the early 90s. Turns out I ended up meeting one of the founders years and years and years ago. And it was Bruce Flanders. There's absolutely no doubt. And believe it or not, on the sports side, because I've done a lot of hard sports too, the Jim Romes and the JT Bricks of the world.
Yes.
I've done the Jim Rome show. I know all those guys from ESPN because they're all ESPNers. Todd Fritz and all those guys. And, of course, Dan Patrick. But yeah, it was Bruce Flanders. He passed this last year. It's funny because I've been to Long Beach so many times and race there and stuff. The management, who's very good friends there. Actually, our TV show was the only TV show besides the network allowed in the celebrity compound and full access to the celebrities for the celebrity race. So we did a show there every year, which is very tongue in cheek, very edgy, ching ching, bling bling. I did a TV show there with the Housewives of Orange County, Miami, Shaws of Sunset for Ryan Hunter-Reay, who was a series champion a few years ago for his Yellow Party, which is the Cancer Foundation event. So I love doing what I do, man. I get up on race day as jacked up as a driver.
That is outstanding. Yeah. And is there something that you found now through all these years, decades and decades of racing, of being part of it, of being on the biggest stage in your world? Is there a way that, or ways that you've really found to give back? Obviously, just giving of your talents and your gifts in helping us experience the event is one thing, but is there a philanthropic side to you or your organizations, things that you've really connected to as a giver?
Absolutely. Currently in this tragic environment we're living in, where it seems like, if you're wearing blue, you got a target on your back. And I know I had a lot of law enforcement in my family, a lot of military. I've had very close friends that were very close friends with officers that were killed. So we do, through my executive board membership with a group called the Pro Players Association and our company, anything and everything that we can. When we lost that sheriff up here in Arapahoe County a couple of years ago, we had a huge fundraiser at a restaurant up there. All the local media came. It's kind of in my DNA. I can't not do that. So we've done a lot with Wounded Warrior. We had one of their warriors on just recently, a guy who climbed Everest with horrific injuries. And the stories, man, I think I've only sworn once on the radio in my whole life. And I did, but the context was okay. But it's just like, we get to do all this stuff, and this guy got blown in half. I mean, that's some scary stuff. Blank. Yeah. I raced in a rally cross country driving the Wounded Warrior 1 car. So that kind of stuff, anything law enforcement wise, first responder wise, we're all about it. In a weird way, I don't know if I'd be here or not, but I think the handwriting is been on the wall. Like I say, I was adopted. I was adopted by Tom and Dorothy Hansen because their daughter Wendy drowned in our pool at home up in the Piedmont Hills in California. It happens. It's the number one killer of kids, 1 to 5 years old. I was very involved in California with the national chapter and with California chapter of the Prevention of Drowning Foundation. I would not have been adopted if Wendy had not died. And adoption in the 50s was a big deal. It's like running for president. I mean, it was hard. It took a long time. Fortunately, my dad had a lot of connections. My mom was a socialite. I'm not saying that being braggadociously. I was very lucky. One of the biggest law firms in California was his firm out of San Francisco. And my mom said, I need a baby. And presto changeo, there I was.
Wow.
So we are forming our own Prevention of Drowning Foundation here in Colorado. There's some that are lingering around, but they're usually tied to a pool company or a pool cover company. So this is not my jam. That's a big project that COVID put a big spike in, but that's going to happen before the end of this year. It's already being done as we speak. So that's going to be, I guess, my what next or next what?
That's incredible. What a fascinating and important cause to really bring that to the forefront. Keep us posted on that.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we support you in that.
Thank you.
I think as we bring this to a close, I would love to know, it sounds like you had incredible parenting and parents who gave you a lot of insight, instruction. Is there any one piece of advice, Kurt, that you've learned from them or anyone else, or that you've just figured out along the way that you would pass along as being that one thing? And obviously there's hundreds of them, but one thing that you would share with anybody listening that would say, if I could offer you one nugget that has made my life great or might make yours great, it would be this.
Kurt Richard, do your chores.
Tell me more. Kurt Richard, do your chores.
They phenomenal parents. My dad died at 39, so that was brutal. Yeah. I had a chore board and everything. And boy, did I have a lot of chores. They gave me a lot of insight and direction, leadership, discipline. Yeah, I knew I was in trouble when I was called Kurt Richard. I knew that very early on. But they didn't give me anything. Like, nothing was just, oh, you wrecked your car, here's a new one. Oh, you lost your $100 baseball glove in the 70s. No. I had a chore board and all my chores, and I said, boy, did I. And if it was a 10-cent or a 5-cent chore, if I missed that chore, it cost me, a 10-center cost me 20, and a 5-center cost me 10.
So you made money or you lost big?
Well, so, I maybe in the next phase, because I kind of think I've been here before, to be candid. I think I've been around this gig before. I mean, this whole gig.
Yes.
And yeah, man, do your chores. Take care of your business, mind your business. Love your life, love your wife, love your family, love what you do. Because if you don't, someone else will. And I'm not saying I'm perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah, when I wanted something, I had to earn it, and it taught me very early on. And maybe this is inappropriate, but I think it's one of the biggest problems we've got in the world right now. Is I think sometimes parents are afraid to be parents, and our generation, built and did great things for this country and had great structure. And there's always been, economic and socioeconomic and racial issues in life. But, man, we got to start taking care of each other.
We do. I agree. And that, I think, is such a great, important point to end on, where take care of your business while you take care of others. Man, if I know that you're in need and I can help, I should be helping. And it doesn't matter who you are or what you do, because if we look out for each other, man, we all get looked out for at the end of the day. Well, I'll tell you, this has been a joy for me. What a treat. I hope the audience got as much of your passion as I did. I feel ready to take on the day. I feel ready to go do great things and find what's beautiful and perfect in my life and go make it happen. So, Kurt Hansen, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And please let me know how we can support you. We're big fans here, and now consider Ramos Law and myself official fans of yours and friends of yours.
Thank you much.
Absolutely.